3 kilometers above the earth, there is a girl falling through the sky. She has no parachute. She is strapped into an airline seat that has been ripped out of the floor.
Imagine plummeting nearly 2 miles through a stormy sky, strapped to airplane seats, only to crash into one of the world's deadliest jungles and survive. At just 17, one girl lived, while 91 others perished. How could such a miracle happen in such a hostile environment? Her story goes beyond luck, revealing how knowledge, resilience, and sheer will helped her endure broken bones, starvation, and the jungle's many dangers, proving that survival sometimes depends as much on the mind as on fate. The crash and free fall. It was Christmas Eve 1971, more than 10,000 feet above the dense Peruvian Amazon, when disaster struck Lanza Flight 508. What began as a routine flight quickly turned into chaos as the plane flew directly into a massive thunderstorm. Lightning flashed violently, and turbulence slammed the aircraft with brutal force. Suddenly, a bolt struck the right wing's fuel tank, igniting a fire that tore the wing from the plane's frame. The aircraft began to break apart mid-air, throwing passengers into terror and deafening noise. Among those on board was 17-year-old Julian Kepka, seated near the back of the plane. She heard her mother's calm words, "Now it's all over," just as their row of seats was ripped from the fuselage. Julian was no longer inside the plane. She was falling freely through the roaring wind, strapped to 3 seats, spinning wildly toward the jungle canopy below. Her world was a blur of rushing air, vertigo, and flashing green leaves until she blacked out. This fall, spanning nearly 2 miles, would be the last moment of normalcy before Julian faced a battle no one expected she could survive. The violent spin of the seats may have actually slowed her descent, acting like a makeshift helicopter rotor. Meanwhile, a powerful updraft within the thunderstorm possibly cushioned the drop, buying her those precious seconds. When she finally crashed into the jungle canopy, dense vines and foliage further softened the impact, factors that would prove crucial to her survival. Yet at the time, none of these life-saving details were clear to Julian or anyone hoping for a miracle. The crash site was buried deep in the Amazon rainforest, an agonizingly remote and hostile environment. The terrifying thought lingered that she was alone after a catastrophic event that slayed 91 others. The mystery of how Julian survived what no one else did was just beginning to unfold. Questions echoed through rescue efforts. How could anyone survive such a fall? What protected Julian from the deadly forces that claimed the plane? These answers would only come with time, as her story emerged piece by piece. For now, Julian lay unconscious on the rainforest floor, still trapped in her seat, far from safety or rescue. The vast, unforgiving jungle awaited her, cold and silent, except for the steady rain that began as she regained consciousness. Facing unimaginable injuries and unimaginable isolation, Julian's ordeal was only starting. The brutal forces of nature tested her in ways few could imagine, but within her lay something crucial, a reservoir of knowledge and resilience inherited from her upbringing. Though the crash had torn the plane apart, it could not sever the lessons ingrained in Julian's mind. Lessons about survival, danger, and hope. What followed would stretch the limits of human endurance and reveal the alarming realities of being alone in the Amazon. Her incredible story was more than the fall. It was about what came after, about fighting the jungle itself. But first, she had to wake and face the grim reality of her injuries. As Julian slowly came to, the terrifying extent of her injuries and the hostile world around her became painfully clear, setting the stage for a desperate fight to stay alive. Immediate aftermath and injuries. Julian awoke to rain falling softly and the strange, overwhelming sounds of the jungle on Christmas morning. Still strapped to the seat, upside down and half buried in mud, pain hit her immediately. Her collarbone was broken and shifted painfully with every breath. Deep gashes on her arm and calf throbbed with intense pain, and a torn ligament in her left knee made every movement agony. Most frightening of all was her vision. Burst capillaries turned the whites of her eyes a deep blood red, and swelling forced her left eye shut completely. Her vision through the jungle green haze became impossible to control after she lost her glasses. The concussion caused mental confusion, which kept her in and out of sleep during the entire first frightening night. Julianne experienced complete isolation from others by Christmas Day because she had grown tired of the initial shock. She called out for her mother, but heard nothing but the confusing drone of insects and the distant call of birds. She found no signs of other survivors, no wreckage, and no signs of the other passengers in the area. The jungle had completely covered the crash site, which destroyed all signs of the fatal incident. The only thing she discovered was a small bag of candy, which lay scattered on the ground between the trash. The food did not meet proper standards for nourishment, yet it provided her with something. She held the object tightly because it served as her only connection to hope in the dangerous wilderness. The rescue planes flew through the sky above her location. The dense jungle canopy obstructed all signals and visual contact with her location. She experienced total powerlessness as she encountered the total isolation that overwhelmed her. The reality of her situation showed that Julianne had survived the fall, but she needed to escape the vast and inhospitable wilderness to achieve survival. The information she learned as a child required her to recollect it. The jungle environment around her created two different types of dangers, which began to take control of her emotions. She showed no fear of the jungle because she maintained respect for its hazardous parts. A soft sound of water dripping reached her ears as a small spring created a narrow stream. She recalled the most important lesson that her father had given her when he showed her how to find running water and follow its path to the lower water level. Her first step to rescuing herself from danger began with this small finding, which served as her only hope in a situation that brought her total doubt. The mobility process presented difficulties for her. Her body suffered extreme pain while she had to move through the ground with her single sandal by testing each area ahead of her. Every step she took exposed her to the danger of hidden thorns and concealed venomous snakes, which blended into the surroundings. Julianne pushed through her physical agony and cognitive impairment to start her gradual progress. She needed to find a way to move through the beautiful yet dangerous jungle environment, which required her to handle two opposite forces that created conflicting emotions. She needed to take every step with extreme caution because her survival depended on it. The jungle was no longer just a backdrop. It had become her test, and only the strongest would endure. Every step she took on that treacherous path became a testament to the survival skills and knowledge instilled in her from an early age. Survival knowledge from childhood. Julianne Koepke's survival was inextricably tied to her upbringing in the Amazon rainforest, where she was raised by two renowned zoologists. Her father, Hans Willem, was an expert on Amazonian wildlife, and her mother, Maria Koepke, specialized in birds. This wasn't a typical childhood. Instead of conventional school, Julianne was homeschooled in the natural world's dangers and defenses at a remote jungle research station called Panguana. At Panguana, there was no running water or electricity, and every day was a lesson in survival. Her parents taught her how to identify poisonous snakes from harmless ones, a skill that literally saved her life when traversing the jungle floor nearly blind from injury. She learned to notice the hidden threats around her, like venomous stingrays buried in the mud, or the subtle signs of dangerous animals lurking unseen. But the most important lesson came from her father. If you're ever lost, find running water and follow it downstream. Waterways lead to civilization, making creeks and streams her essential guide out of the jungle. This rule was not just theoretical. It was a lifeline encoded by years of experience living in the Amazon. Julianne developed superior survival capabilities because she spent her life observing wildlife and experiencing the forest's dangerous conditions, which enabled her to outmatch ordinary travelers. The knowledge served as a protective weapon that defended against all dangerous elements that inhabited the jungle, from aggressive animals to poisonous plants and biting insects. Julianne dedicated her educational efforts to studying nature's precise threats while learning methods to prevent those threats from harming her. The special education she received equipped her with daily skills that she needed to use after her plane crashed. Her parents' hard-earned knowledge was ready for examination. Her candy rationing decisions, unknown fruit consumption choices, and snake avoidance movements all originated from the survival skills she learned during her earlier years. Most people fear the forest, yet Julianne shows deep appreciation for its natural beauty. She maintained alertness through the process, which helped her remain alive during critical situations. People needed to acquire more than just information. The patient developed physical weakness because of her concussion, major injuries, and the progression of her infection. Educational training that developed survival abilities needed to combine with strong willpower and steadfast commitment. In that moment, the lessons from Panguana became more than information. They became the difference between life and death in the Amazon's relentless grasp. Her cautious journey following that vital rule launched her into a dangerous trek full of unexpected perils and physical agony. Navigating the jungle alone. With her injuries throbbing and vision blurred, Julianne faced the daunting challenge of moving through the unforgiving Amazon rainforest. She found the tiny spring that fed a rivulet and chose to follow it, trusting the survival rule her father had drilled into her. Every step was an agonizing trial, slowed by her broken collarbone and torn knee ligament. Walking barefoot with only a single sandal to test the ground, she had to be painfully cautious against hidden dangers like thorns and venomous snakes expertly camouflaged in the foliage. The jungle floor was a minefield. Julianne's blurred eyesight made it difficult to distinguish between harmless vines and deadly vipers until she was dangerously close. As she waded into the water, she knew the risk of stingrays lurking in the mud, their barbed tails capable of delivering paralyzing wounds. Although she understood that piranhas rarely attack in flowing water, the flowing creek was no guarantee of safety. Each step along the muddy bank was a gamble between survival and fatal injury. Days blended into one another as hunger gnawed relentlessly. Julianne rationed the small bag of candy she had rescued from the wreckage, consuming just 1 or 2 pieces a day. She passed fruit trees in the jungle, but refused to eat their offerings, unable to identify them clearly without her glasses and wary of poisonous traps. Choosing starvation over the risk of poisoning was a grim but necessary choice, highlighting the jungle's merciless tests. Nightfall brought cold temperatures and swarms of relentless insects. Mosquitoes and biting midges covered her skin with itchy welts, buzzing incessantly near her ears and nose. Sleep was brief or non-existent, leaving her exhausted and vulnerable to the forest's psychological toll. The overwhelming discomfort blurred the lines between pain and fear, shaping her fragile state of mind. The sound of king vultures flying overhead produced a terrifying noise that stopped her heartbeat. Julianne knew these scavengers only descended where death was close. The source led her to a disturbing discovery, which showed 3 airplane seats that lay on the ground with passengers still fastened inside. The decaying smell spread throughout the environment, which forced her to develop mental strength against her feelings of sickness and terror. Julianne urgently examined the feet of the woman who sat in the central seat to identify her mother. The woman painted her nails, which confirmed the truth that Julianne established through her investigation. She experienced a wave of guilt, which combined with relief when she understood that her solitude would persist. She kept moving through the stream while her body grew weaker because she could only drink water. The 6th day brought a new source of hope when she heard a hooting call that belongs to a subtropical bird that shows people where they can find open water and human habitats. The echo of her mother's lessons pulsed through her veins, which created a weak feeling of hope. The jungle maintained its dangerous threats, while the psychological burden of being alone and injured increased throughout each passing hour. The aircraft crash inflicted damage to her arm, which transformed into a dangerous new combat area. The tiny incision, which remained moist and exposed, turned into a developing infected wound. She found a shocking fact when she saw that maggots had laid eggs, which developed into larvae that entered her body through her skin. The pain from the jungle tortured her body in a way that represented the unyielding power that the jungle had over her body. Despite the horror, Julianne refused to succumb. The agony in her arm now rivaled that from her broken bones, but she pressed onward. Each step was a testament to human determination clashing with the raw power of nature. The infection in her arm would soon force a desperate and excruciating decision, testing her resilience even further. The infection and self-treatment. The infestation of maggots in Julianne's arm was more than just a physical torment. It was a psychological nightmare. She could feel the larvae wriggling beneath her skin, the unrelenting sensation of being consumed alive, igniting a deep terror. Attempts to dig them out were futile. The creatures were too deeply embedded and too numerous. She understood that if left untreated, the infection would spread, leading to sepsis and certain death. The solution that luck provided to the situation turned out to be a terrible outcome for the African woman. Julianne discovered a small palm-thatched hut beside the river after spending 10 days in the jungle. The building contained equipment, together with a vital discovery which included a gasoline canister. The words of her father came back to her with complete clarity. Her father used kerosene to slay the parasites that had infested their family dog after it had experienced a similar worm infection. In her urgent need to treat herself, she thought of gasoline as a product that functioned similarly to kerosene. Julianne decided to use gasoline as her solution because she knew it would cause her extreme suffering, yet it remained her only option. The burning sensation started immediately after her contact with the open wound, because it felt to her like her arm had caught fire. The jungle remained deserted while her screams filled the space, but nobody came to listen. The maggots started to appear one by one because they tried to break free from the scorching chemical. She counted 35 as they emerged, each a horrific ticket to survival. The field surgery that she accomplished by herself showed her extreme determination to stay alive. Julianne decided to remain quiet in the hut because she could not bear to move while she suffered from her injuries. She understood that the small motorized canoe outside belonged to her because it served as essential equipment for him to survive in the jungle. The night brought her freezing temperatures, which made it hard to sleep because of her collarbone injury. She discovered strange comfort at the riverbank because the flowing water had become her only connection to life since the crash. On the 11th night, Julianne stayed awake and waited for rescue even though her chances of being rescued had decreased. The jungle became silent because she stopped moving, while they both awaited a distant promise that appeared only faintly. The next morning, voices broke the stillness. 3 men, local lumberjacks, stepped cautiously from the forest, stunned and terrified at the sight of the skeletal, bloodied figure before them. To them, Julianne was no longer a girl, but a ghost. The mythical Yakumama, come to lure them to doom. Fear froze them for moments before her spoken words shattered the spell. She was real, alive, and in desperate need of help. Their shock turned to compassion as they cleaned her wounds and shared the first real food she had seen in nearly 2 weeks. They marveled at her story, knowing the official search had long since been called off. For Julianne, survival had required not just strength and knowledge, but a fierce courage to confront the most harrowing ordeal imaginable. From that moment, her path shifted from isolation to recovery, forever marked by the resolve born of unimaginable pain and relentless will, encountering wildlife and harsh conditions. As Julianne pressed deeper into the Amazon, she began to face the full fury of the jungle's ecosystem. The presence of large animals like caimans slipping silently into the water and howler monkeys roaring overhead signaled just how far she still was from civilization. While the sights and sounds of these creatures were astonishing, they also served as warnings. These animals thrived only in undisturbed, remote areas. Each encounter reminded her that safety was still a long way off. The relentless environment battered her body and spirit. Her emaciated frame was covered in hundreds of insect bites, raw and festering in the humid heat. Fever gripped her, a clear sign that infection was spreading rapidly through her wounded flesh. This sickness sapped her strength day by day, and she felt herself growing weaker and more disconnected from reality. By the 9th day, exhaustion overwhelmed her. She collapsed frequently, barely able to stand, bobbing along the riverbanks and grasping for anything to hold on to. Hallucinations began, flashes of light, phantom voices whispering in the jungle's dense shadows. The line between waking and dreaming blurred as her body waged its final battle for life against infection, hunger, and despair. Carried downstream by the river's current, she floated when she couldn't walk, a fragile passenger on a slow-moving artery out of the wilderness. The river widened, hinting at her gradual approach toward a human presence. Yet, there was still no sign of rescue, no settlement visible beyond the dense greens. Each passing hour stretched unbearable, her hope waning amid the jungle's vast embrace. The arrival of night brought increased cold temperatures, which created medical discomfort for her. Her dress became soaked, and it remained too thin to protect her from the decreasing cold temperatures. The presence of mosquitoes and biting midges blocked all attempts at sleep. She experienced a strange mixture of fear and reverence, which originated from the jungle sounds that used to be background noise. Julianne used home lessons to maintain mental stability while she experienced extreme physical suffering. She recalled the soft voice of a hating bird that her mother had taught her about, which built its nest close to places where people and water bodies existed. The fragile spark of hope showed Julianne that not everything had been lost because civilization still existed within reachable distance. Her situation became dangerous because every new second introduced additional threats to her safety. The infection in her arm developed into a serious condition, which produced a gaping wound that became infested with maggots to destroy her body from the inside. The pain became impossible to handle, yet I needed to continue working because I had no choice but to stop. Her determination would face its toughest challenge when the forest rains continued to fall without stopping. Her journey through the jungle was far from over, and the very landscape that nurtured life also harbored death. The Amazon did not relent, forcing Julianne to face its harshest realities with nothing but willpower and the training of her past. This crucible of wildlife and elements set the stage for the extraordinary steps she would take to save herself from an unimaginable threat. The spreading infection was a cruel enemy that demanded swift and painful action, pushing Julianne to confront her deepest fears in an act of raw survival. Rescue and recovery. After enduring unbearable agony and hollow despair, a sudden breakthrough came on the morning of January 3, 1972. Voices pierced the dense silence that had enveloped Julianne for nearly 2 weeks. 3 local lumberjacks emerged, momentarily stunned by the skeletal, bloodied figure before them. To their eyes, she was no longer human, but a terrifying apparition of local myth. The pale-skinned Yakumama said to lure men to their deaths. The men stood frozen, caught between fear and disbelief. It was only when Julianne spoke clearly in fluent Spanish, identifying herself as a survivor of the Lanza plane crash, that the spell was broken. Recognition replaced terror as the men grasped the reality before them. A living, breathing girl who had endured the impossible. They rushed to her aid, washing decades of mud and blood from her wounds. For the first time, Julianne tasted real food and clean water after 11 days of starvation and misery. The men listened, astounded by her story, and shared the grim news that rescue efforts had been called off days earlier. Her survival was nothing short of miraculous. They carefully carried Julianne into their small motorized canoe before starting their difficult 7-hour trip downriver, which led to the nearest village that contained a missionary hospital. Safety became available for her first time after the fall because the situation that had troubled her complete existence began to fade away. The hospital doctors experienced shock when they observed her medical state and realized she had managed to survive. The maggots extracted from wound after wound were a grim testament to the severity of her fight. Her spirit remained unbroken beyond all obstacles, which created a powerful presence of strength that contrasted with her delicate physical state. Julianne had to leave her current location when she needed to go to Pucallpa, which was her intended destination, before everything turned disastrous. The emotional reunion with her father reached its peak because she felt both relief and deep sorrow over her mother, who had passed away. The moment symbolized an endpoint that led to a new stage in her healing process. Julianne provided vital information to rescuers after her medical condition reached stability because she showed them the location of the crash site and the route she had traveled. Her detailed knowledge accelerated the discovery of the wreckage and the other victims. The first-hand account she provided to investigators restored a narrative that people assumed would remain vanished. Authorities confirmed the heartbreaking truth. She was the sole survivor among 92 passengers because she was the only one equipped with the knowledge and courage to fight for life. The people who survived the initial crash had to stay in the jungle because they lacked both resources and physical strength to get away from its lethal hold. Julianne's story is a testament to the extraordinary power of human will, preparation, and hope, a shining light born from the darkest moments in one of Earth's most unforgiving places. The miracle of survival. Julianne Koepke's survival was nothing short of a statistical miracle, shaped by a rare combination of physical forces, environmental luck, and the knowledge instilled in her since childhood. Experts who studied the crash found that the row of 3 seats she was strapped to acted like a helicopter rotor, spinning as she fell and significantly slowing her descent. This spinning motion reduced the impact force, giving her a chance no other passenger had. Adding to this was the intense updraft created by the thunderstorm. Such powerful upward winds can sometimes cushion falling objects, and in Julianne's case, it likely lessened the speed of her terminal fall. This natural buffer, combined with the breaking apart of the plane, created unusual conditions that improved her odds of survival. Finally, the dense and tangled vines and foliage of the Amazon canopy softened her violent landing. The jungle's thick layers of leaves and branches absorbed much of the shock, preventing fatal blunt trauma that most would have suffered from free falling onto hard ground. Without this living cushion, surviving the fall would have been almost impossible. The necessary physical elements failed to account for Julianne's survival as the only living person from the event. The autopsy results of the victims showed that 14 additional passengers survived the first descent yet perished in the forest. The hostile surroundings prevented most people from moving because they had severe wounds. They felt too terrified, or they did not possess the necessary survival abilities. Julianne received her vital advantage from her Amazonian upbringing, together with her zoologist parents. The jungle presented her with dangerous situations, which she could navigate through using her father's main instruction to locate water that flows and track its path to the sea. The knowledge she possessed at that moment controlled her movement because it led her toward safety. Her mental strength and ability to stay calm during challenges proved to be another crucial element for her. Julianne maintained her concentration despite facing dangerous situations, which included her serious injuries, the threats of hunger and infection, and the hostile nature of the wilderness. Her determination to live, combined with her learned survival skills, which became part of her nature, enabled her to live. Julianne experienced deep emotional pain because she lost her mother, who had survived the fall but died in the area. The environmental disaster revealed how cruel the natural world can be and showed how people live on a very narrow boundary that separates them from death. The situation showed how survival skills become essential when situations demand urgent action. Julianne's story demonstrates that survival requires people to have 3 specific elements, which are luck, preparation, and personal determination. The Amazon region required her to have both physical and mental readiness, which made her the most fortunate person since she survived as the only person who could meet its challenging conditions. The people who witnessed Julianne experience her fall learned to identify her as different from everyone else because she showed them her capacity to function after sustaining her injuries. The crash resulted in initial survival for many passengers, but they eventually died due to their sustained injuries and because of their panic and their inability to find safe directions. Julianne continued to advance despite her broken collarbone, severe pain, and multiple deep cuts. She developed practical skills through her Amazonian upbringing, which enabled her to track running water while she avoided all unknown plants and kept herself from feeling panic. She made active choices to survive while others remained frozen in their shocked state. Her legacy lives on as an inspiring testament to the human spirit's ability to triumph against nature's deadliest odds. In that green hell, knowledge proved mightier than death. Julian Kepke's story shows us that survival is more than chance. It's knowledge, courage, and relentless will. If you found this incredible tale inspiring, please like this video and subscribe for more amazing stories of endurance and hope.